Rotero adaptado, inglés, UUA. She was just a child, the cleaner's daughter, invisible to the eyes of the wealthy. That rainy afternoon she was forced to eat alone out in the storm because she couldn't come inside. But when the millionaire saw her shivering and soaked, something in him broke, and what happened next transformed not just that house, but the lives of hundreds of people. This is the story of Mirella, the girl who ate in the rain and taught a billionaire to be human again. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? And if you like stories that touch your heart and make you think, subscribe to the channel. There's a new story every day to move you. The sky over New York City was heavy, like lead. Dark clouds rolled in over the gleaming skyscrapers of Midtown, signaling a storm that wouldn't let up. Inside the Vasconcelos mansion, everything seemed insulated from the chaos outside. Triple-paned windows, silent air conditioning, Italian marble floors reflecting the cold light of crystal chandeliers. It was a world apart, protected, impenetrable. Augusto Vasconcelos paced the living room, his phone glued to his ear, his voice firm and impatient. He was negotiating a multi-million-dollar deal, something about bidding, site preparation, tight deadlines. He was a man in his early 50s, graying hair slicked back, a custom-tailored suit, a Swiss watch on his wrist. He had built an empire, literally. His construction company erected skyscrapers, shopping malls, luxury condos. Augusto was respected, feared, admired, and distant. In the back of the house, far from the marble and crystal, was the service kitchen. There, Donna Lucia worked in silence. She scrubbed the sink with precise, almost automatic movements, the result of 7 years of routine. She wore a faded apron, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her tired eyes watched the clock on the wall. Her shift was almost over. But she still had to wash the lunch dishes, wipe down the patio, organize the pantry. Donna Lucia was invisible. Not literally, of course. She was there every day from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening. But she was invisible in the cruelest way. No one truly saw her. No one asked how she was doing. No one knew her last name. No one knew her story. She was just the cleaner, a functional piece of that impeccable backdrop. And that afternoon, her daughter was waiting for her. Mirella was 11 years old. She was in the backyard under a torn awning that let streaks of rain drip through. Sitting on a cracked plastic chair, she held a plate of rice and chicken in her hands, leftovers from the employer's lunch which her mother had carefully saved. It was the only warm meal Mirella would have that day. The girl looked up at the sky, watching the clouds tear open and pour down water mercilessly. She was used to it. Used to waiting, used to eating alone, used to not asking questions. Her mother always said, "You can't go inside, my darling. We don't belong here." Mirella understood, or at least she pretended to understand, but something inside her, small and stubborn, always wondered. Why? The rain intensified, the wind shook the awning, and more water fell on the girl. She tried to shield herself, hunching her shoulders, but the plate slipped from her hands. The rice spread across the wet ground. Mirella looked at it, motionless. She didn't cry. She just took a deep breath, picked up what she could salvage, and continued eating, her fingers dirty with mud and rain. It was at that moment that Augusto walked across the lawn. He was heading to his car to get a briefcase he'd forgotten. He was distracted, still on the phone, his umbrella held over his head. But as he passed the backyard, something caught his eye, a small, hunched figure under the awning. He stopped, he looked, and he saw. Mirella was drenched. Her hair plastered to her face, her clothes heavy with water, her hands trembling as she tried to eat. She looked so small, so fragile, so forgotten. Augusto felt something strange in his chest. A pang, a discomfort, something he couldn't name. The girl looked up and saw him. Startled, she tried to hide the plate behind her back. "Sorry, mister. My mum said I couldn't come inside," she mumbled, her voice barely audible above the sound of the rain. Augusto didn't reply. He stood there, holding his umbrella, as water streamed down the girl's face. She looked at him with fear, as if expecting a shout, a scolding, an order to leave. But he said nothing. He just turned and went back into the house. His hands were shaking. Augusto closed the door behind him with more force than he intended. The sound echoed through the empty house. He dropped his umbrella on the floor, forgot the briefcase in the car, and hung up the phone without saying goodbye. He stood there in the hallway, breathing deeply, trying to understand what he had just felt. That image wouldn't leave his head. The girl, the rain, the plastic plate, the trembling hands, the frightened eyes. "You can't come inside." He called for Donna Lucia. His voice came out drier than he intended. "Lucia, come here." She appeared in seconds, flustered, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. When a boss called like that, it was never good news. "Yes, Mr. Augusto," he pointed towards the yard. "Your daughter is out there." Donna Lucia paled. I asked her to wait out there, Mr. Augusto. She doesn't get in the way, I swear. She doesn't make noise. She doesn't mess anything up. She's eating in the rain." The silence that followed was deafening. Donna Lucia rushed to the window. She saw Mirella, soaked, shivering, the empty plate beside her. And at that moment, something inside her crumbled. She fell to her knees right there, hands over her face, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Augusto. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to see. I just wanted her to have something to eat. She's alone all day, waiting for me to finish. I have nowhere to send her. I'm so sorry." Augusto looked at this woman, who'd been cleaning his house, washing his clothes, preparing his food for 7 years, and realized he knew nothing about her. Absolutely nothing. He didn't know if she had a husband. He didn't know where she lived. He didn't know how many children she had. He didn't know her last name. And for the first time in many years, Augusto remembered who he was before he was rich. He remembered his father, a construction worker who used to take him to job sites when he was a child. He remembered eating packed lunches sitting on bricks under a scorching sun. He remembered showering with a hose because there were no bathrooms on the site. He remembered his mother, a laundress, who ironed clothes in the middle of the night to earn a few extra dollars. He remembered having been invisible. He reached out his hand to Donna Lucia, helping her up. She hesitated but accepted. She was trembling. "Bring your daughter inside," he said, his voice hoarse, "and never let her eat alone again." Donna Lucia looked at him, incredulous. But sir, you always said—" "I know what I said." He cut her off, harsher than he intended. He took a deep breath. "But I was wrong." He walked into the backyard. The rain soaked his expensive suit, his Italian shoes, his neatly combed hair. He knelt beside Mirella. She looked up at him, still scared. "Do you like chicken and rice?" he asked, trying to smile. She nodded shyly. "Then come. Today, you're eating at the table. With me." And taking the girl's small, cold hand, Augusto led her inside. For the first time in 7 years, Mrs. Lucia entered through the front door. In the following days, the routine of the Vasconcelos mansion changed subtly but profoundly. Mirella began having lunch in the main kitchen, sitting at the dining table next to her mother. Augusto insisted. At first, Mrs. Lucia resisted, embarrassed, but he was firm. "No one eats alone in this house anymore." Augusto's wife, Helena, watched everything with suspicion. She was an elegant woman, always impeccable, who had never questioned the established order. To her, there was a clear line between employers and employees, and crossing that line seemed inappropriate. "You're overdoing it, Augusto," she said one morning over coffee. "It's a nice gesture what you did, but you don't need to make a spectacle of it. The girl can eat in the service kitchen, comfortably out of the rain. She doesn't need to sit here with us." Augusto looked up from his newspaper. "Why not?" Helena hesitated. "Well, because it's not her place." "And what is her place?" She didn't know how to answer. Augusto folded the newspaper carefully and looked at his wife. "Helena, I've spent my whole life building things. Buildings, companies, fortunes, but I never stopped to think about what I was destroying along the way. That girl was eating under a storm because I said she couldn't come in. I did that. And if I don't change now, what difference does anything I've built make?" Helena fell silent. She didn't agree, but she didn't argue either. Mirella, meanwhile, was slowly getting used to it. At first, she ate in silence, head down, as if expecting to be kicked out at any moment. But gradually, she started to smile, to ask questions, to tell stories about school. And Augusto, to his own surprise, enjoyed listening to her. One afternoon, while they were having lunch, Mirella asked, "Mr. Augusto, were you ever poor?" The question caught him off guard. Mrs. Lucia nearly choked, trying to shush her daughter. But Augusto smiled. "I was very poor." "And how did you get rich?" "By working, by studying, by getting lucky." Mirella thought for a moment. "So, can anyone get rich?" Augusto hesitated. He wanted to say yes, that it just took effort and dedication. But he looked at Mrs. Lucia, who worked 7 days a week and could barely afford rent. He looked at Mirella, who studied in a rundown public school, with no books, no lunch program, no hope. "No," he answered honestly, "it's not that simple. But we can try to make things fairer." "How?" Augusto didn't have an answer. But that night, he stayed awake thinking. 2 weeks later, Augusto called a meeting at the condominium. He invited the building managers, residents, administrators. He presented a simple but revolutionary proposal to create a space where the children of the condominium's workers could have lunch, study, and play while their parents worked. He called the project Open Table. The reaction was mixed. Some applauded the initiative. Others frowned, uncomfortable. "This will turn into chaos," complained a resident. "They'll bring in outsiders, increase insecurity." Augusto took a deep breath. "These children are already here. You just don't see them because they're kept hidden, in the backyards, in the garages, under the stairs, waiting for their parents to finish work. I'm just proposing that we treat them like people." The silence was awkward, but in the end, the proposal was approved. Augusto funded everything. He renovated an abandoned recreation area, hired cooks, bought tables, chairs, books, toys. Within a month, the space was ready. On the opening day, Mirella was the first to enter. She looked around, her eyes shining, and whispered to her mother, "Mommy, is this real? Can we stay?" Mrs. Lucia, with tears in her eyes, simply nodded. In the following months, Open Table became a success. Dozens of children began attending the space. They ate, played, did their homework. Some, for the first time in their lives, had a safe place to be. And Augusto, always watching from a distance, felt something he hadn't felt in years: pride. But not the pride of building a tall building or closing a $1 million deal. It was something different, something deeper. It was the pride of having done the right thing. Years passed. Mirella grew up. She became an intelligent, curious, determined young woman. She studied diligently, got the best grades in school, and dreamed of going to college. But reality was harsh. There was no money. Mrs. Lucia earned little, and every cent was accounted for. When Mirella turned 18, she received a letter. Inside the envelope was news that would change her life. She had been awarded a full scholarship to one of the best private universities in the country. Mirella read and reread it, incredulous. Mrs. Lucia cried. Neither of them understood how this was possible. The letter didn't say who had granted the scholarship. It was anonymous. But at the end, there was a phrase written by hand in a shaky script. "For one who deserves to eat at the main table. With admiration, A." Mirella recognized the handwriting. It was Augusto's. She ran to the mansion, but he wasn't there. He had traveled for work. She left a note with Helena. "Thank you for everything." Helena read the note and for the first time smiled genuinely at Mirella. He would be happy, she said. Actually, he is happy. He can't stop talking about you. Mirella entered university. She graduated with honors. She became a lawyer. She specialized in labor rights, and ironically, her first major case was against a construction company that exploited workers in inhumane conditions. Augusto, upon hearing this, laughed. She learned well, he commented, proud. Years later, Augusto was in his office when he received an unexpected visitor. Mirella, now a renowned lawyer, entered with a smile on her face. "I came to thank you," she said. "You don't have to," Augusto replied. "I do. You changed my life. And it wasn't just the scholarship, it was everything. It was showing me I had a right to be at the table. It was teaching me that dignity isn't a favor. It was making me believe I was worth something." Augusto felt a lump in his throat. "You always were worth something, Mirella. I was just slow to see it." She smiled, moved. "You know, I never forgot that afternoon. The rain, the plate of rice, the fear. But I also never forgot what you did afterward. You could have turned your back, but you didn't. And that made all the difference." Augusto looked out the window. Outside, the sky was clear. No more storms. But he still remembered that grey afternoon as if it were yesterday. "You know what I learned, Mirella," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "that we can build skyscrapers, make fortunes, conquer the whole world. But if we don't look at the people beside us, the ones out in the rain, shivering, eating alone, we haven't built anything. We've just stacked bricks." Mirella nodded. "And today, how many kids are eating at the table because of what you started?" "Hundreds," he replied with a shy smile. The Open Table initiative spread to other apartment complexes. It became a benchmark. It even became law in some cities. "Then you built something bigger than any skyscraper." Augusto looked at her, moved. "No, you built it. I just opened the door." They hugged. And in that instant, Augusto understood. True wealth isn't in what we accumulate. It's in what we share. Outside, the sun was shining. The storm never returned. But the sound of that rain, mixed with the contained tears of a millionaire and the shy smile of a young girl, would echo forever within the walls of that house, as a reminder, as a promise, as a lesson. Because sometimes dignity begins with the simplest gesture, sharing bread, even in the middle of a storm. What did you think of this story? Have you ever experienced or witnessed something similar? Leave a comment with your thoughts and the part that moved you most. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive stories that move, inspire, and make us reflect. There's a new story here every day. Until next time.